welcome you all. Welcome you all to the National Online Faculty Development Program, jointly organized by BMS College of Architecture, Baswangudi, and COA-TRC, Bhopal. I take this opportunity to thank our beloved director, Dr. Mamta Piraj, for motivating us to take up this FDP, and BMS management for all the support. And also we would like to thank COA-TRC Bhopal for the continuous support and guidance what they have been giving us to continue this FDP on research paper and book chapter writing in architecture and planning. I now request our director, Professor Dr. Mamta Piraj, to kindly inaugurate the event through welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning to all the members present for this faculty development program, which is a joint collaboration with COA-TRC Bhopal. At the outset, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to the resource persons here for sparing their valuable time to be part of this FDP and to impart their required knowledge and skills to all the aspiring research scholars and faculty members who are present here. I extend a very warm welcome to you all, and thank you so much for sparing your valuable time. Also, we have with us Director TRC, Mr. Navneet from Bhopal. A very warm welcome to you too. And this is, I think this joint collaboration with Bhopal we have been doing for quite good number of times now. And he has been a good support in helping us out to take off on this FDP. And thank you so much for that, and I extend a very warm welcome to you from BMS College of Architecture. Also, extend a warm welcome to all the members, participants who are present here. And it was really nice to see in the morning that we have participants from all over India representing for this. This itself shows that in architecture, we have moved ahead trying to bring in more value addition in terms of research too. We as architects, we have been in this process. Research is not something new, though formally we are trying to put it in a research format as of now. And according to me, I always believe that when we come up with new designs, new build forms, trying to explore new materials as such, the research is already there in place. It keeps happening. Only thing now, we are going much more in a more deeper manner, in a more intense way to bring out the best, which can give some more value addition to this platform of architecture and related studies. So this time the FDP has been on research paper and book chapter writing in architecture and planning. I'm sure there are many aspirants who are planning to do this research, and this will kind of tread a path for them how to go about and achieve what they have set the goal with. And to tell a few points about it, we at BMS College of Architecture, we are into architectural education since 1980 and have been one of the pioneers in imparting architectural education with undergrad, postgraduate program in habitat design and the research center with about 12 research scholars working here under the research center affiliated to Vishweshwaraya Technological University. And of course, I don't want to really get into too many points because the resource people are here to talk more about it. But definitely, we as teachers, this research becomes very important for us because this is one of the ways to keep ourselves updated with the trends, what is happening, because whatever we get back to the studios and impart, it all depends on the teachers too, like how you can motivate the studios and the students in the studios. Unless we get into the practice or the research, I'm sure like it's not possible to do justice to the students in the studio. So this platform definitely will help us to do justice when we walk into the studios as faculty members. And I'm sure all the participants here, you will have lots to take back because we have good resource people on various topics covered under the research area. I'm sure you'll have lots to take back to your research as well as to your studios, to the students too. Because here I don't look at research as the research what you are working on, but definitely it is something which is inbuilt in whatever we are doing, and it has to percolate into the studios too when you're interacting with the students. Because research is something which is the basis for us to do that base work whenever we take up anything. With this, I wish you all the best. I'm sure this journey is going to be wonderful for you. We will try our best to see like how best things can be put in place to make sure that you get the best out of it. And also at this point of time, I would acknowledge BMS College of Architecture faculty who have been coordinating and working with the TRC Bhopal with Mr. Navneet and with the college over here, Architect Neeta, Associate Professor, who is also a research scholar working on almost has progressed in her research on her research in the Bangalore city itself on blue and green links, what she is working on. And we also have Architect Shubhra, Associate Professor, and Architect Rakshit, Assistant Professor, who have been coordinating for this training program. I wish all the best to all the participants and the resource people. And I'm sure we are always there to do and give you the best possible from BMS College of Architecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director ma'am. I would now invite the Director, COA-TRC Bhopal, Dr. Navneet Mukot, to address the experts and participants and declare the program open, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar. On behalf of the COA-TRC Bhopal and the BMS College of Architecture, Bangalore, I, Dr. Navneet Mukot, Honorary Director, COA-TRC Bhopal, welcome all the participants, experts, and dignitaries for this National Online Faculty Development Program on research paper and book chapter writing in architecture and planning. This FDP aims to explore the various steps and methodologies adopted by academicians, practitioners, and research scholars during the different stages of architectural publication. This program will focus on types and steps followed in architectural writing by understanding and exploring the process from identifying research gaps to publishing the manuscripts. Handy tips on research techniques and tools will guide researchers to frame and publish their manuscript in recognized journals and books. Participants will learn the methods and methodology of research while exploring the importance of originality and IPR, means intellectual property rights. The program would immensely benefit research scholars, faculty members, and practicing architects who are interested in architectural writings. I'm happy to share with you that from January 2021 to till today, the TRC Bhopal has conducted more than 50 faculty development program, short-term training program, teacher training program, and workshops. Also, during the 3 years of its establishment, since December 2019, the TRC Bhopal has successfully organized more than 85 events in which more than 10,000 students, academicians, and practicing architects have got benefited. I would like to convey that the TRC Bhopal is committed to provide and ensure the delivery of a quality online FDP, HTTP, TTP, and workshop, which is why its criteria for the selection of domain experts are very tough. For example, in each event, 10 experts are selected from 10 different states of our country. Among these 10 experts, the inclusion of 4 to 5 female experts are compulsory so that participants can be benefited from diverse as well as contextual experience, knowledge, and wisdom based on the profile of the experts which are instructing them. The TRC Bhopal also strive to take care of our budding academicians and researchers and professionals so that all the participants can gain as much as enriching knowledge and skill sets as possible from these events and programs for extending the horizon of their personal and professional growth. The TRC Bhopal strongly believes that if and only if the academicians, professionals possess quality education, intellectual or wisdom, then only they can serve the society in a better way, which ultimately benefit the entire architecture fraternity. We all are aware that during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, the online platform have become the first choice of participants as well as experts. However, the TRC Bhopal always keep limited seats in the program offered by it because the COA New Delhi is not a profit-making institute, and through the TRC, it's maintaining and ensuring only top quality education as well as facilitation of meaningful interaction with experts and participants. Thus, the TRC Bhopal is just following the student-teacher ratio in every event and program offered by it. In the same regard, it is my humble request to all the participants that please interact with experts or ask your doubts, queries as much as possible so that you can increase your intellectual capabilities through curiosity and keenness. This is extremely important because then only you can deliver what is truly expected out of you. And by looking at your examples, your student will also surely implement what you have taught to them in their classes. Here, I again request all the participants not to register in any program just for getting a certificate alone, but for really learning and developing yourself personally and professionally. On this occasion, I would also like to invite all the COA Registered Architecture Institute to collaborate with TRC Bhopal for organizing similar short-term training program, teacher training program, faculty development program on a national level, covering various contemporary topics which are the need of the hour today. Such initiative will further allow the exchange of intellect among the members of the fraternity as well as provide a platform of interaction with each other. Once again, I welcome all the participants and experts who will be the part of this faculty development program. My best wishes to the organizing team for the success of this 5-day event. Thank you. Namaskar. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that speech. Now, before going to the session 1, we have a few instructions to the participants, which we'll be reading out. Please note it down without fail. There are certain regulations which you need to follow as participants. The first thing is you're requested to log in to the meeting with the name with which you have registered. Kindly avoid logging in to the meeting with any other name apart from the registered name. Second point is you're requested to log in 15 minutes prior to the session to ensure a better experience. And kindly keep your microphone on mute and video camera off when the expert sessions are going on. In case you have any queries or questions, while a session is going on, you can type in the chat box or can ask in the question and answer session. At the end of the session, there is time for question and answer session. And e-certificates will be only provided to the participants of this program only if you follow these criteria. One is you have to have 100% attendance, and attendance will be taken in all the sessions individually. And after that, you have to score minimum 60% in the MCQ test, which is scheduled on 9th December from 4:15 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. And you have to, without fail, you have to fill the feedback form at the end of the session. Then only all these, if you fulfill all these criteria, you will be getting the e-certificates. After this, we'll be moving on to our session 1 with the speaker, Dr. Devlina Chatterjee, who is already here with us. Dr. Devlina Chatterjee has BTech from IIT Kharagpur, an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, 2 master degrees from Penn State University in the US, and PhD in finance from IISc Bangalore. She has worked for a total of 20 years, 8 years in the corporate sector, and 12 years in the academia. Currently, she teaches in the Department of Industrial and Management Engineering at IIT Kanpur. She teaches courses in econometrics and economics and research methods. Her research interests are in consumer finance and tourism. She has published several papers in reputed journals and conferences. Over to you, ma'am.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay. So thank you, Professor Mamta Raj and Council of Architecture for giving me this opportunity. I realize that, you know, I am facing an audience of, you know, what you do is very new to me, and I don't know to what extent whatever I have to say will be useful to you. But I think to a certain extent, all of us who are trying to do research, or all of us who are trying to generally communicate our ideas to others, the principles of communication remain the same. So I hope it will be of some use to you. So, I'll just share my set of slides. I hope I can share it. Yes. So is it visible? Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is visible.
Okay. So basically today I'll talk about academic writing. So since this is a your session, or this FDP is about how to write research papers or how to write book chapters. That is basically what I am going to talk about, that is academic writing. So I thought, initially I was given some other topic, but I thought this would be a nice topic to get it started. And the first thing is that why is writing an important part of research? Okay, so writing, so many of us think that, the analysis part of whatever we do, collecting data, doing the analysis, that is the, the meat of the research, and we do not pay that much of attention to writing. But in some sense, writing and communicating whatever we have found to the correct audience is really very, very important. And it is not just important for communication, but it is important as an integral part of research itself. So there are external formal requirements for writing. You have to write it because it is required. You have to, if you are doing a thesis, or you have to present project reports, if you are writing conference and journal papers, you have to write. You have to publish your research because it establishes your credibility as a researcher. So when you do research and you publish it, and your research gets comments and it is critiqued by your peers, that is where the credibility of the research comes in. And it is also, as I said, it is an integral part of research. It is not just that you are communicating your ideas to an audience. Writing actually helps in the research process. So what happens is that you have done something, and when you try to write it out, your own thinking becomes much more clear when you're trying to present it, and you realize that what you have said is not perfectly clear. You go back and look at what you have done and try to present your results in as clear a way as possible. So it is an integral part of research. You write to remember, you write to understand, and you write to test your thinking. Okay, so you have, suppose you are trying to present 3 ideas in one particular paper. So what are these 3 ideas? So or you are trying to integrate ideas. So maybe looking from an architectural point of view, suppose you are trying to look at how to include more green principles in building in making a building. Okay, and in addition to green principles, it also should be cost effective, or it should include other aesthetic principles in it. So these are the 3 things that you are trying to address in your paper, and you need to state them up front that these are the 3 things I'm doing, and you keep writing it forward, and you make this the structure in order to convey something to your audience. So now, what is academic writing? Many of us write many different things in our lives. We write emails, we text on our phones, we do so many different, every time we are doing something like that, we are writing. Okay, so while a text on a phone can be as simple as a hi, or what are you doing, or even emojis, or you use some kind of LOL, and everyone in your audience knows what it is. In fact, if you write it out laughing out loud, people will think something is wrong with you. But this is not just that. There is an audience for that, and there is a context for that. But academic writing is more formal, and the main part about academic writing is that it has to be objective, unbiased. The whole idea is that even in journalistic writings, if good journalists do not take a position. They present you with the facts, and they allow you to come up with to read the article in the paper and come up with your own idea of, interpret it according to how you feel. They should not tell you how to interpret it. Of course, these days that does not happen, because most of the time, most of the journalists are, they are expressing their opinions. But academic writing or journalistic writing is not about expressing opinions. It is geared towards contributing to the body of knowledge. Now, when you are doing research, basically what is happening is you are in some sense, you are increasing the body of knowledge. Some people know something, you are maybe a very, very small bit of it you are increasing, but it is geared towards that. So what is the purpose? The purpose is to contribute to the field of knowledge on a topic. Who are your audience? The audience are scholars, researchers, and practitioners within the field of study. So again, for you as architects, you may write some kind of papers which are geared towards other researchers in architecture. You may write some kind of project reports which are geared towards practicing architects, and the way you write these 2 different papers may be very different. What you assume that other researchers will take for granted, or they will know the language. So the language in what you write will be different in these 2 different kinds of audiences. The tone has to be professional, unbiased, and formal. Okay, it cannot be conversational. What do you think this is? Or why are you doing that? You cannot use too much of this is not the kind of language that is expected. Okay, and it has to be unemotional. This makes me very angry. This kind of, not paying attention to details in research makes me very angry. So this is not an appropriate kind of thing to write in a in academic writing. So what are some of the examples of academic writing? Research papers, peer-reviewed journal article, textbooks, lab reports, literature reviews, etc. So what are the key criteria for good academic writing? The first thing for good academic writing is not writing at all. You know, like you don't just sit down and start writing your paper. What you first do is you have to plan what you want to convey. Because many times the ideas that we want to convey are complex. So how do we want to convey, how do we want to structure our report is very important. Okay, structure our paper. So you have to plan what you want to do. You have to think critically. What does critical thinking mean? That means that you don't accept your own writing as, you know, or your own thoughts without questioning it. So you should be your own critique first, because many times we tend to have some preconceived notions, preconceived biases, which leaks into our writing, or which leaks into, we should try to stay away from that. We should try to stay as objective as possible. Another thing is you need to reference to the extant literature. So you cannot very often and this is one of the reasons why academic writing has credibility, that is you don't just throw out an opinion out there or a fact out there without providing a proper reference for it. Whenever you state that, suppose you say there are only 10% of buildings in India have green certification. So where did you get that 10%? 10% figure? So you have to provide references, well-supported points. Again, as I said, that your points have to be well-supported. Whatever you write should be evidence-based, or there should be a logical development of your thoughts. You cannot jump from one thought to another without taking your audience along with you, that how you went from one point to another. And most importantly, grammar. This is one of the things that very often, our writers, our students, and many papers that also come to us for review, we find that they haven't even done a preliminary grammar check. So these days there are online grammar checking software like Grammarly. You must absolutely use such software to check your grammar, because it is, in some sense, when you give a person to read a grammatically incorrect paper, they will not even look at whatever else you are talking about. First, they will be put off by the incorrect grammar, and they will say, this is not worth my time. When you are taking up someone's time by asking them to read your paper, you have to respect their time. Okay. So how is academic writing different from professional writing? So as I said before, that you may be writing for a professional purpose. So for instance, you may be writing for other architects, or you may be writing, a brochure for a particular architectural firm or something. In that case, you are doing something that is called professional writing, or even if you are writing memos within an organization. So this is professional writing. So you may not have a title page. You may use bulleted lists. Okay. You may use bold font or italics for emphasis. You do use bold font. You can use bold font and italics in academic writing also, but not as frequently. Like you might use it only for the headings or something. You don't want to keep distracting people with bold font or italics in the middle of a paragraph. Okay. In professional writing, tables or charts will be used. Of course, in academic writing also, you may use tables or charts, but oftentimes you also explain them in paragraphs. And in professional writing, you are not called upon to give the list of resources. You may give list of resources, but in academic writing, you must absolutely always, give support for your statements by citing and by giving references. Otherwise, people will say, how do you arrive at this point? So think of it like you are going into an audience of similarly knowledgeable peers, and you are trying to talk to them in a language that they are comfortable with and they are accustomed to. And when you talk in that language, your ideas will be accepted more easily. Okay, so basically we will talk about some of the principles of academic writing. These are the principles that may guide what you want to do. So what are these principles? Cohesion, clarity, logical order, consistency, unity, conciseness, and completeness. Okay, so we'll talk about each of these one by one. So what does clarity mean? Clarity means, so many times when you are talking, when people say, they say, there is no clarity of thought, or what you are trying to say is very convoluted. So you want to say that this building is not, or whatever, I'm trying to, excuse me, because I do not know the concerns that architectural researchers may be associated with. But suppose you're trying to say that this building is not aesthetically pleasing. Now, why is it not aesthetically pleasing, or what about it is, or the lines are not straight, or it does not have, visibility, it blocks visibility, something. Whatever you are trying to say, it should be very clear to your audience. Another thing about good writing is that it is concise. Whatever you can say in one sentence, don't use 2 or 3 sentences to say it. Say it and be done with it. Because, in one of the misconceptions that usually, even in India, people have, that they have to fill pages. They have to fill more and more, they have to make it sound somehow very lengthy. When you write answers, you have to fill so many pages. But academic writing, you should say it quickly, and you should make your point and then move on to the next point. There should be cohesion. There should be smooth movement of ideas or flow between sentences and paragraphs. So this is a little more difficult to do. So, when you write, sometimes your own ideas can jump from one to another. When you read it again, or you ask some friend to read it, or a peer to read it, they may be able to tell you, how did you come from this point to this point? So, if you have a sort of flow chart of points in your head, that this is what I want to say. And typically one thing that I tell my students many times is that you can think of it as a funnel structure. So you start out with the most broad point that you want to make, then you come to a little bit narrower point, and finally you come down to the most specific point that you are trying to make. Okay, so it's like a funnel when you're writing. Consistency refers to uniformity of writing style in terms of sentence structure, grammatical structures, spelling of words, which spelling you are using, whether you are using American English or you are using UK English, use of punctuation, citations, etc. This is a very important part which many times many writers miss. So one citation will be, so there are different formats of citation. There is an APA citation, there is a Harvard kind of citation, Chicago, and so on and so forth. If you use one particular style of referencing, that is the style you should always use. Okay, so there are specific, there is I will give you a resource for, how to understand and which styles to use. Formality. Academic writing is formal in tone. Do not use slang or informal wording or shortened forms of, some shortened forms, which it's not quite done in academic writing. Logical order. Logical refers to a logical order of information moving from general to specific. Again, as I said, this is that funnel structure where you move from the most general idea and then you move to a more specific idea. And exclusion of irrelevant information. Do not include ideas that do not directly relate to the topic. Okay, so sometimes, what happens is sometimes we get carried away and we write a lot of, extraneous material. This happened, that happened, so and so. So suppose you're trying to write about how, in my own case, I was writing a paper on how COVID affected people's well-being, So I went on about I wrote 3 paragraphs about how COVID affected people's income levels, people's employment, this, that. First of all, in the world, this has happened. Then in India, this happened. Then I wrote 3 paragraphs on this, and this really had nothing to do with what I myself wanted to convey or the research that I had done. So when I got back some comments, I quickly shortened it into 1 paragraph, and it feels so difficult to do away with your own writing. So one of the hacks that one of my mentors told me is that keep a folder in your computer called dripping genius. Your genius is dripping all over the place. Cut out all this part and put it in the dripping genius. And then, someday maybe you will use it again, and you will never use it again, but at least you don't delete it directly. Huh? So the dripping genius folder. Huh? So then, of course, there is variety. Sometimes, there is this, one of my relatives was asked to say what happens in their house in the morning. He was asked when he was very small, class 1, class 2. So he says, I get up in the morning, my father gets up in the morning, my mother gets up in the morning, my brother gets up in the morning. I brush my teeth in the morning, my father brushes, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is it is the same idea, and it creates no variety. And in your writing also, be careful to see that you provide some variety, some interest. Some sentences can be shorter, some sentences can be longer. Do not start all of the sentences in the same way, and so on and so forth. So this is a quick checklist for understanding your readers. So very, very important thing before you write is who will read your report. Who is it that the main purpose of writing is to convey your ideas to your audience. So who will read your report? Professionals who expect me to follow every academic convention and use a standard format? Well-informed general readers. So you will see that if you go onto the web and you type some thing that you need information on. So people who write blogs, they may be very well-informed blogs, but they definitely do not follow the style of papers. Papers will have a typical structure. They will start with an abstract. They will have an introduction section. They will have a literature review section, and so on and so forth. If you're writing for well-informed general readers, you may follow a different kind of structure. If you are writing for general readers who know very little about the topic, then you have to make it more simple, and you have to introduce all the terms which, say, well-informed readers may take for granted. Okay. What do they expect you to do? Should I entertain them, provide new factual knowledge, help them understand something better, help them do something to solve a practical problem in the world? What is it that you are really trying to do when you write? So for instance, suppose you have, your role is, I have found some new and interesting information. I have found how dolphins communicate. Your reader's role is entertain me. Reader's response is, that's interesting. So you are providing new information, but you are not telling them how you found that dolphins communicate or whatever. You're just saying, I have found how, and this you may write as an article. I have found a solution to an important practical problem. Help me solve my practical problem. Suppose your reader is saying that, I have this issue, I have this kind of a problem when I'm trying to design my green space in the city, or I want to reduce pollution, or I want to increase connectivity between workplaces and between residences. This is a practical problem. So example ways in which we can reduce pollution in Delhi. So the reader says, oh, so then this is what your purpose is. What is your purpose when you're writing something? I have found an answer to an important question. Help me understand something better. Example, to what extent does culture affect the level of materialism in a society? So the reader's response might be, that changes the way I thought. See the difference between the solution to an important practical problem and the answer to an important question. So these are two different, both may be academic research, but one is more practical and one is more theoretical. And theoretical research, in some sense, because it aims to change the way people think, theoretical research is actually very, very difficult to write, because, it is, your writing itself is part of the way of how people might think about things. When they may read whatever you are writing, and they may pause and cogitate over it in their own minds, and they may say, oh wow, that is very interesting, that changes the way I look at the world. And in some sense, this is the highest ideal that one can aspire to. And if you can write like this, many big authors and poets, even poets, it's not that you have, when someone may write a piece of poetry that changes the way you look at the world. Okay, so these are the different kinds of roles. So in order to understand I'm sorry, this, how much can I expect them to know already? What do they know about my topic? Is the problem one that they already recognize? Is it one that they have but haven't yet recognized? Is the problem not theirs but only mine? Will they take the problem seriously, or must I convince them that it matters? Okay, so suppose you see that there is a lot of trash lying around in the city, and you feel that this trash has to be separated. So the compostable trash has to be separated from the dry trash, and they have to be processed differently to reduce the total amount of trash that is there in the city. Now, this may be a problem which, if you go and talk about it with very poor people, the poor people have such larger problems in their lives that to them trash does not they don't even notice the trash. They may be living right in the middle of it. It may not be something that is important to them unless it affects them personally. So suppose you go and tell them, so what should you tell them in order to convince them that separating trash matters to them and it matters to their well-being? So you may be able to say that, it affects your health, it affects the way you feel about your neighborhood, it affects the motivation that your children will have, it takes away the playing spaces of your children because the park is filled with trash. So what is it? What is the problem? How do you convince your audience? Meanwhile, people who are from higher income groups, they may already know about it. They may be already worried about it. And you do not have to lay the groundwork in order to convince them. So how will readers respond to the solution answer in my main claim? Will it contradict what they already believe? How will they make standard arguments against my solution? So while I'm not going to go into some of the things that go around these days, but there seems to be very clear ideological divides in the world right now, and the left wing, the right wing, whatever one wing says, the other person has their mind made up, and nothing you say will change their mind. So in that case, should you even try? Okay, so this is a thing. Tone in academic writing is formal. You should not use exaggeration, this is extremely important. It may be very important, but the way you write it has to be more toned down. It should be impersonal. Your writing tone should be impersonal. Don't bring the writer, the person who is reading your report has to be more worried about what you are saying rather than about who you are or who the person is that is saying this thing. So do not bring your own personality or your own opinions too much into the thing. You should directly get to the meaning. And finally, academic writing, see, the whole way that science and academia, the way it progresses is by argument and by, someone says that this is true, others say, no, this is not true. And there is this constant discussion which goes on, which allows us to go from, from simple ideas to more complicated ideas. So unless we are willing to accept those more complicated ideas. So for instance, when Einstein came in and said that, light and matter, they are related to each other through this equation. Before that, people did not think that that was true. And if people did not have their, if they were not open to this new idea, we would never have evolved scientifically. Now people have even moved away from the theory of relativity to further theories, and this is because the scientific community is open to questioning what they think they know, because what we think we know today may not be the truth tomorrow. What does academic writing look like? Focus on the issue, not the writer. This I have already said before. Keep your writing objective and impersonal. So instead of saying this in this essay, actually, I don't quite agree with this thing. They are saying, I will examine how gender and ethnicity are factors that can affect buying behavior among adolescents. It's saying this is correct. This article examines how gender and ethnicity. But in some journals, actually, they prefer if you say, I will examine or we examine, something like that. Okay. In my opinion, assisting developing countries to grow crops such as tobacco and opium poppies is not in their best interest in the long term. So here you see in these two sentences, definitely the second sentence, you are saying assisting developing countries to grow crops such as tobacco and opium poppies may not be in their best interest in the long term. Okay, so you are sort of toning it down, and you are taking your definite opinion out of the equation. Sentence writing tips: create an objective, confident voice. Use the third person. Okay, this research shows that. Consider your use of tenses. You need to be clear about whether you're discussing something that happened in the past or something that is having an impact upon the present. So Smith's argument illustrates that. Freud's theory supports the view that industrial revolution had an impact. So see, in that Smith's argument, even though the argument was made several years back, it was made in 1914, whatever the argument says is still relevant now. That's why they are using the present tense in it. So argument illustrates that, supports the view that. However, the Industrial Revolution had an impact upon society in a number of ways. Now, this is something that definitely happened in the past. So that's why they are using the past tense, where they are saying had an impact. Okay, instead of saying has an impact or had it, they are putting it in the past tense. Okay. So it does need to have an element of formality. Avoid contractions. Don't use things like don't. Okay, don't, can't, it's, should have, like that. So you avoid using informal words. Smith's bit of research is okay. Smith's research is significant because he says or he talks about. Okay, even though you may, while you are speaking, you may say he says or he talks about. So you can say when you're writing an article, you may say he states or he maintains or he argues, something like that. Okay, use of words like get, got, or a lot. Use of words such as, so they get these results or they got these results. Instead of that, if you say they obtained these results, it may be more formal. It is more formal. Okay, so again, we use moderate or objective language, presenting your discussion in an objective and open-minded way. This leaves the door open for further discussion and or research. It's unlikely that you have reached the only possible conclusion. So this view is correct. You can, so basically what they're saying is tone down your absolute certainty that whatever you have done is the last word on whatever idea that you are researching. Okay, so maybe you're contributing this. The use of the word very to indicate superlative. So we in India, we tend to do this. So we say they are very bright, they are very brilliant, you know, especially when used with already superlative words such as brilliant, where there is no need to put a very in front of it. Okay. Do not stereotype, generalize, or make assumptions about religion, physical and mental capacity, age, sexuality, marital status, and/or political beliefs. So don't say something like, white Americans are always for, always oppose gun control or something like that, because that may not be true. While a majority of white Americans or many white Americans may do so, many white Americans may not do so also. So, making, stating such stereotypes or saying something like, children from disadvantaged backgrounds are typically not very successful in life or something like that. These are not correct stereotypes to put it in academic writing. So again, there are different kinds of words that you can use. So sometimes we think, how can we say the same thing? So he said, this author said that author said that. Instead of that, these are some of the other words that you can use. So-and-so commented on this article. They described the nature of whatever, or that they describe the level of, one of the ideas that we were researching was the idea of over-tourism in certain destinations. So they describe the level of over-tourism, or this point illustrates, and so on and so forth. These are some of the more interesting words that can be used. So as we said, use appropriate language and be clear and concise. Conciseness. So there is something called the gunning fog index. Okay, so maybe it will, if I click on it, it will give me the gunning fog index. Okay, so this gunning fog index is called a readability text. So basically, this index estimates the years of formal education a person needs to understand the text on the first reading. So a fog index of 12 requires a reading level of a high school senior, and so on and so forth. So what is it made of? Basically what it says is that the number of words per sentences plus the number of complex words. So complex words are words that consist of 3 or more syllables. Okay, so for instance, if you say confusion, that is 3 syllables, confusion. Okay, so so if you, even the word confusion is considered to be a complex word. As you can imagine, so many times we have this temptation to use very difficult sounding words in our writing because we think that will make us look more erudite or something. Now I used the word erudite, so that itself is not, that's a more complex word. It makes us seem more learned. Let me use a easier word. So if your fog index is very high and if it is very complex, then your audience will not understand what you are saying. So it is more important for you to communicate to your idea rather than to impress the audience with what level of difficult English you know. Okay, so keep your gunning fog index. So for instance, the denotation was obfuscated by the orator. The meaning was hidden by the speaker. Okay, not that that's a very good sentence, but whatever. The theorist called Sigmund Freud wrote a significant piece of work called On Narcissism, which offers valuable insights into. So Freud 1914 is a short form for the idea that this is the paper called On Narcissism, which you will put in your bibliography. So Freud 1914 offers valuable insights into. Avoid vague words or phrases. And when you say they, it, them, they, her, whatever, whenever using pronouns, be careful to see that in fact your audience knows who you are talking about. Now we have talked about individual words and individual sentences. Now writing a paragraph. Okay, so writing a paragraph is actually very, it is important to know how to write a paragraph. How do you structure a paragraph? So there are certain rules for that. A paragraph is a collection of related sentences dealing with a single topic. This is a very important idea, which we do not often emphasize and which we do not often follow. That is, one paragraph should ideally only introduce one topic. Okay, so think of the writing. You are so recently I was thinking of how to explain writing. Room is sort of the introduction part of the writing. The kitchen is the methodology section, where all the food is being cooked. The dining table where you sit and eat the food. At this part. So basically the point is, when you are writing, you have to make it as easy as it is for your audience. So when you write a paragraph also, paragraphs give this structure to your writing, which allows you to communicate with your audience. Use that structure. Each paragraph should cover one idea or one aspect of an idea. Learning to write good paragraphs will help you as a writer stay on track with your drafting and revision stages. So one of the things that I tell my students often is that before you start writing the paper, you write the headings of the paragraphs. What are the paragraphs that you will write? Within each paragraph, in a bulleted point, say in this, or within each section, you say in this section, I will write 4 paragraphs. In these 4 paragraphs, the first paragraph will talk about this idea, the second paragraph will talk about this idea, and so on and so forth, so that you have a very clear idea before going in. So now, when you write the first paragraph, do not think about the second paragraph. Just think of the first paragraph. So learning to write good paragraphs will keep you stay on track. Good paragraphing also greatly assists your readers in following a piece of writing. You can have fantastic ideas, but if those ideas are not presented in an organized fashion, you will lose your readers. Next time when you read something, go and check, especially the writing of someone that you like, someone's writing that you enjoy, go and notice how they put in paragraphs in their writing. So consists of a topic sentence, a number of support sentences, and optional concluding sentence. So basic rule of thumb is to keep one idea to one paragraph. If you begin to transition into a new idea, it belongs in a new paragraph. Simple ways to tell if you are on the same topic, you can have one idea and several bits of supporting evidence. You can also have several points in a single paragraph as long as they relate to the overall topic of the paragraph. If the single point starts to get long, then perhaps put them in different paragraphs. So don't have a paragraph that runs over 1 page, 2 pages or something. A paragraph should typically be something like maybe 10 sentences long or something maximum. Okay. So there should be a topic and controlling idea. The most general sentence in a paragraph should be the first one. Every sentence should support the topic sentence. Okay, so too specific. The slang expression "so long" is a corrupted version of the Arab word for goodbye, salam. English has been influenced by many languages. The Arabic origin of many English words is not always immediately apparent. Okay, so what should I do after I have written my topic sentence? This is the point you want to make in support of your topic sentence. P. Provide some evidence to support your point. Make sure you explain why your evidence supports your point. Explain. Use this sentence to reinforce your original point and link to your next point. So the last sentence should gradually provide a flow to the next paragraph. So this is what we were saying, that there is a logical flow from one paragraph to the next. So look at this illustration of the TPEELC format. The introduction of university education has also had a major impact on the role nurses play within patient care. Okay, this is the topic sentence. That is, nurses play some role within patient care. University education has helped them play that role. As nurses have been able to develop their knowledge and skills away from the worries and stress of their work environment, they have become more empowered and more confident in the workplace. Who says this? Someone called Stevens in 1992. So you are providing evidence for this sentence. As a result, they are more likely to offer their opinions as professionals and have a greater role in patient care. So what are you saying? You are saying that when you take nurses away from their medical environment and take them to schools and colleges and give them further training, they actually become better at performing their roles. This is clearly demonstrated. So this is the point you want to make. This is clearly demonstrated by the work of Myson 2003, who found that university-trained nurses are more likely to consult with doctors in trauma and pediatric wards. Now see, you are not making the same points as you made in the red sentence. You are further explaining in what ways you are supporting in trauma and pediatric wards than their hospital-trained counterparts. This is a change from the hospital-based educated nurses who are well-trained but play a relatively insignificant role. So what you are saying is when nurses go out and get their training, even doctors listen to them more. Okay, this is the point you are making. In her review, analyzing the traits of nurses trained in hospitals rather than universities, found that deference to authority, particularly in relation to doctors, was stressed throughout their training. So in hospitals, nurses will be trained to be more differential to the doctors. They will be said, if the doctor says so, you just shut up, okay, and you do what you are asked to do. But when they go and get their own university training, they say that we are also well-qualified medical professionals, and we have a different view of patient care, and we will give our opinion. University education. Final sentence is the conclusion sentence, which you are using. University education has therefore led to the advancement of the nursing profession, where nurses now have a voice in patient care plans. However, it must be noted that because university education does not reflect the true nature of the working environment, students often have difficulty adjusting to other aspects of ward work. So now you will see, however, it must be noted, this sentence is giving you a flow into the next paragraph where you possibly they will argue about the cons. So this was the pro of university education for nurses. Next sentence will give the cons of university education of nurses. So they are also telling you what to expect in the next paragraph. So useful phrases for different purposes. How do you go from one paragraph to another, or how do you go from one sentence to another? You can use words like also, as well as firstly, next, then, finally, so on and so forth. Phrases for transitioning from one paragraph to another, you can use words like regarding this, they have something else to say, admittedly, consequently, whatever. Phrases for emphasis, moreover, in fact, additionally, so on and so forth. For phrases for counterpoint, conversely, on the other hand, however, nevertheless, notwithstanding, and so on and so forth. Okay. So this is how many research reports are structured. You have the preliminary, you have a title page, abstract and contents. You have the main text, which is introduction, methodology. Of course, there is a big part which is missing here, which is the literature review. So you have the literature review, methodology, findings, results, discussion and conclusion. Finally, you have your references and the appendices. Okay. So this is again, I don't know how much time I have. So have I gone out over time?
No, ma'am. I mean, another 5-10 minutes.
Okay, sure. Then I'll be done.
Actually, we have 5-10 minutes. You can continue. Yeah.
Okay,
and then we have interaction. Yeah.
Okay. So these are the preliminaries where what is the title of the assignment. Now, one thing that I would like to successfully a paper will be. Okay, so it is like when you buy a product online or offline, many times just the brand name itself tells you what you can expect. Okay, so now of course Fair and Lovely has become something else, huh? So, but you know the name Fair and Lovely itself tells the person who is going to buy that product that they will become fair and they will look lovely. Okay, so what is the name of your paper? Many times, the name of your paper will determine whether other people will look at your paper, will read your paper. So one thing that I have often found is that the word simple, you know, if you say something is simple, people seem to be attracted towards that. This is a bit counterintuitive because we think that, oftentimes what we write should be very complex. So I have a paper which is called a simple, model of demand estimation, something demand of onions or something. So just because it says a simple example, that paper has many citations, so people are looking for something that is simple. So the name of, I'm not saying please don't think that all paper names should start with simple, but your paper itself, the paper name should be very indicative of the work, and think hard and long about it. It should not be very long. It should be short and sweet, and it should exactly tell your audience what you have done. Okay, then the abstract. The abstract is also extremely important and extremely difficult to do. Write the abstract at the end of having done everything else. Don't start with the abstract. And the abstract, writing an abstract is a art, and art in itself. How do you summarize your entire paper in a 100-word or 200-word summary? And the keywords allow people to search, get your papers online. So which keywords do you want? Who are the other people that you want them to be able to discover your paper? So you should use keywords according to that. The main body of the article consists of one or more sections. Introduction introduces the background and the motivation for the research. So this is very important. Many times people don't know what to write in their introduction. Basically, think about the introduction as you are telling the audience why they should read your paper at all. Why is your paper important? What is it that you have done that is so great? Okay, so you have to say, so for instance, one of the ways of telling people why your research is important is that you point to a practical problem and you say, this is a practical problem. It leads to this much of difficulty for people, and our research, and no one has studied this practical problem, and our research addresses this practical problem. And this is why you should spend, 10 minutes or 15 minutes of your time in going through my paper. So you are it's like an elevator pitch for your paper. The theoretical background introduces the appropriate theory. Now, this theoretical background is also very difficult to write, but it is what elevates the academic paper from the purely statistical report of your, I don't know how much statistics people do, but sometimes people present their papers, we have done this, that's it. Blah, like whatever, this bad. So why have you done this? Or what is the theory that informs the model that you have used? That is important. Literature, of course, that introduces the relevant research that other researchers have done. Then you talk about your research questions. Oh shoot, just excuse me. So let me, yeah. So then you have the methodology section, results and discussion section, and the conclusion section. Each section will consist of several paragraphs of ideas and arguments, and paragraphs are linked in order to connect the ideas. Introduction, I will leave this stuff. These slides are with you anyway. So methodology section, what are the methodology section, results and discussion, and finally the conclusion. And then you have your bibliography. Bibliography should always be on a separate page. There are certain websites which can help you compile a bibliography. Okay, so if you cite it properly in your paper, if you include these, you put these apps on your, or you connect it with your Word, if you cite it properly, it will construct the bibliography. These applications will construct your bibliography. So these are the ways in which you can compile a bibliography by yourself. I personally prefer to always, any paper that I have cited, I quickly go and bring the citation or bring the reference and put it in my bibliography section so that I do not forget in later on. Okay, one very important idea to emphasize while writing is the one of plagiarism. So plagiarism is when you take something that someone else has written and take it verbatim or take it and just produce it in your own paper. So this is something that, you know, our research students or our researchers or even our teachers, sadly to say, many times they are not aware of the idea of plagiarism or how serious an issue it is. See, the point is, when you are writing something, you are creating intellectual property. Whoever is writing is creating intellectual property. When you, in today's world, intellectual property is the main property that most people have. Okay, your ideas, your writing is what you own. Now you cannot steal other people's ideas, other people's words, other people's writing without giving proper acknowledgement. And even with giving proper acknowledgement, you cannot directly, you know, verbatim quote them. Very rarely, suppose there is a definition for which there isn't really any way of, you know, saying what they said. So you may put that in quotes, but try to avoid doing that. Try to paraphrase what other people have done or summarize what they have done. You know, it is it's very tempting to do plagiarism, especially when you are, when you are running against a deadline or something. But the penalties for plagiarism are very large. And penalties for plagiarism do not just affect the person who has plagiarized, but the institution that they're a part of. You know, it really leads to loss of face. So many papers have been retracted which were plagiarized. Please, you avoid it at all cost. So these are some examples of plagiarism versus paraphrasing samples. Okay, direct quote from research: Japan's beautiful Mount Fuji last erupted in 1707 and is now classified as dormant. So non-plagiarized paraphrases: Mount Fuji, the highest mountain in Japan, is actually a dormant volcano. You are saying the same thing, but you are not directly copying what someone else has said. Okay, non-plagiarized paraphrase. Again, I will give these slides to you. So when you are editing your report, did I include an introduction and conclusion? Did I answer all of the topic questions and fulfill all the requirements? Did I type the paper using the correct font size? Now, this font size is very important. Whatever font size you choose, keep the same font size throughout, both the font and the size. Okay, except for tables, sometimes you are not able to fit the entire table into one page. So you may use a smaller font size for the tables, but otherwise it is very, very distracting and unprofessional to, you know, sometimes use Times New Roman, sometimes use Arial, different font sizes. Do not do this. Did I paraphrase all content? Did I use parenthetical notations for quotes? Are all words spelled correctly? Put your paper through spell check, through grammar check. Did I capitalize the beginning of each sentence and all proper lines? Did I punctuate correctly? You know, so where do you put a comma? Where do you put a semicolon? So on and so forth. Do my sentences make sense when read aloud? Have I had my paper peer edited? So many times, even before you send it to a journal, you may ask someone to read your paper and give you critical comments. Okay, does my paper flow well? Did I include a bibliography? So outline, draft, revise, edit. Now here what I will say is revision, you know, revising your paper over and over again. Sadly, this is a you know, reality of writing. And the more you revise, the clearer your ideas become and the better your paper becomes. Again, you know, this is benefits of an outline, creating an outline, paper writing tips, useful references. Okay, so this is it. I think I will give these slides, some of the slides that I was not able to go through in detail. You can look at it, but basically the idea is that there is a certain structure of writing a formal academic paper. There is, within structure, there is further structure. Start with a draft, start with an outline first. First think that this is what I'm going to write. And then within that, these are the points that I'm going to make. For each of those points, create a logical, coherent structure. And this is, I think, how a lot of, if you break it down into pieces, then it is easier to write a research article. There, I am done.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that detailed explanation on academic writing and giving us so much clarity about it. I hope definitely the participants have benefited a lot. Now the session is open for question and answer. Any of you have any questions? You can unmute yourself and ask.
I think I clarified all the doubts. Shweta Purohit. Any questions anyone has? I mean, one of the problems, is there any specific rule to position the citation in a sentence? Not really, but the way you write the citation will change depending on where you put it. Okay, so for instance, suppose you are saying that this issue has been studied by several authors. Okay, and then you say that within brackets you put Gupta et al. 2017, Nadkarni and Sharma 2018 or something like that. So what will happen is over there you will say Gupta et al. 2017 separated by a semicolon. Then you will say Gupta, Nadkarni and Sharma, 2018. So this is the way you do when the citation itself is coming inside a bracket and you are putting several citations together to support a particular point. Then you do not put the years within brackets again. Okay, but suppose you are trying to say something like Nadkarni and Sharma 2017 found a new way of doing this. So over there, there is only one set of authors and they are part of your sentence. They are not part of a bracket at the end of the sentence. They are the part of the sentence. Over there, the year comes within the bracket. But there is no rule that you have to do this or you have to do that.
Any other questions?
Another thing that I wanted to say was that, writing is very hard. In some sense, it is, in my opinion, at least nowadays, I feel that it is the most hard part of writing a paper. So when you find it hard, don't feel discouraged. Everyone finds it hard. You have to just, and it is very hard. So I find that, after I have been writing something for 2 hours or 3 hours, my, back aches and I cannot think of anything else. Like, it's cognitive work and you feel very hungry after that because you're actually burning calories as you are trying to set your, think hard. Thinking is as difficult a work as, physically working out or so. Yes. Someone else had a question. Shall we include conclusions in the abstract? So the point is that you can include conclusions in the abstract in a very not conclusions, but sort of can you say what you have done in one line? Don't say that, oh, this conclusions will be more detailed, and conclusions typically what they do is in the conclusions in a proper research paper, if you have come out with a result, you try to link it back to your literature review, and you try to say our results are in consonance with such and such results, or our results contradict so and so's results. So and so got this result, but we got something else. This may be the reason that we are from a developing country, so over here, or we are from a collectivistic country, or whatever it is. Why do you think your results are not? It is not that immediately the reviewers will not accept your paper just because your results don't match that of someone else, or your results always have to match in the literature. But you should provide good arguments for why it is not matching. So that is the conclusions part. But summarizing the results in the abstract is necessary in one sentence or maximum 2 sentences. How do we get to decide who reads our paper, ma'am? You don't. You don't. You send it to a journal. You choose a journal that is relevant to what you have done, and don't always. I'm not saying that don't target the highest reputed journal, but target a journal which is sort of in keeping with your work, where your have a realistic understanding of what you have done, and whether it will get accepted, and you send it to that journal, and they will decide, the editor of that journal will decide to send it to a reviewer, and that reviewer can be anyone from the world. And that is the scary part and the beautiful part about academics, is that it sort of democratizes and universalizes our contributions. Anyone in the world can look at your paper and see give their judgment. Of course, they have to be experts in that area. They will be thought to be experts in that area. Who does citations? What's that, ma'am? How do citations generally work? What does that mean? What do you mean? How do citations generally work?
Ma'am, may I ask directly?
Yes, please unmute yourself. You can ask.
Yeah. Ma'am, actually, so when we say these many people have cited your paper, so does it mean that they have to, the citation has to be mentioned somewhere, or how does it actually get a count?
No, so this is what happens is, so this is done by, say, suppose someone has published a paper. All of these are done through Google Analytics, and there are other, other scholarly scopers or something like that. They are actually looking at every new paper that comes out, and they are looking at the bibliography of that paper. And that bibliography, say, suppose someone has cited, 50 or 60 articles. Each of those articles, their citation count goes up by 1. Every time. It's like, in some sense, it's like the YouTube views or whatever, everyone who views YouTube, the YouTube views goes up by 1. So there is someone, how does it go up? Like someone is keeping track of this, right? And finally, YouTube is giving you an analysis that your video has got these many views. Just like that, they are telling you that your paper has got these many citations.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else? Okay. So I think we are done.
Ma'am, just in continuation to what the previous question is, like you said, they would have kept a track of the number of references. And so what if they refer our paper but don't put it in the bibliography or this thing? Then how does it work?
See, if what do you mean by refer your paper? If they haven't put it in your bibliography, that means at
they
least
have not referred, but
they
only
have
they
not
have
referred.
they have read
your paper. And in fact, many times what people do is they may have used your model also.
Yes.
And they would not have put it in their bibliography. So then you can
There is a lag.
but I don't know whether the editor will see. This is the place where peer review. When your paper goes for review to a reviewer. Now I am not sure that reviewers actually do it. Which person has that much of time to see what all papers are there? Okay, so but in an ideal world, the reviewer would be an expert in that area, and they will say, hey, come on, these people have done this work. Why haven't you referred to them? You know, and so they may actually tell the authors. So before the paper comes out, they will tell the authors that you have to refer to these other works that have happened. You know?
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Any more questions? Okay, ma'am. Shall we
Yeah.
conclude the
Okay.
session?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a lovely time, you know, during this thing. And I will leave the meeting now.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Now, hope you all had a knowledgeable session. Now we'll be moving towards our session 2, day 1. The resource person for our session 2 is Dr. Harimohan Pillai. Sir has completed BSc in BSc Chemistry from University of Kerala in 1972, BArch Honours in 1979, and PhD in Architecture from IIT Kharagpur. Currently practicing in Thrissur, Kerala, and invited as guest faculty for architectural design and allied subjects in several schools of architecture across India and Texas Tech University in USA for teaching architecture of non-Western societies. A member of Senate at School of Architecture and Planning, Vijayawada, recently joined as a professor design chair at MIT ADT University, Pune, and also mentor for master's course in traditional Indian architecture knowledge system. We welcome you, sir, for the session 2, and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Neeta.
Thank you.
I hope I am audible. And
yes, sir, you're audible.
thank you. Yes, so I think that was a very rigorous session that all of you had about writing. So writing is not easy, you must have understood, because all the research work, generally what we do, we have to write in English. This is one issue. You have to be good in the English language. I'm going to speak about another aspect of what I wouldn't call writing, but doing a research work using illustrations. The role of illustrations in research work, especially architectural as a method in architectural research methodology. The reason why I'm going to speak about this particular aspect is that I believe architecture is an experiential domain. How much can you write about architecture? It is all experiential in nature. Good architecture, well-designed buildings need to be experienced by simply looking at the drawings of a well-designed building or even a poorly designed building. One cannot take a decision about how good that creation is unless you experience the space. And once experience, if experience can be converted into in a visual format, these days we can do videos also, but sketching was one of the qualities which was expected from an architect in olden days. In sketch, through sketches and drawing, if you can convert that experience, make it more illustrative, it can be understood by, at least by architects, about the importance of illustration in research and architecture. Let me share what I have to discuss with you. Is my screen visible to you all?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
So I'm going to speak about, say, architectural research methodology, how to write, and the nuances of writing already Madam Devlina has discussed with you, but I'm talking about illustration. Within the domain of writing, what role illustration plays in architectural research, and how to use both together, writing as well as illustration, to justify the research methodology that you have used in your research work. Now, these are all known things that I am presenting before you. That research methodology is a way of explaining how you intend to carry out your research. Your methodology should detail your approach to the research. All this is discussed already, that it should be reliable. You should have some valid results which addresses your aims and objectives. Whatever data you are going to collect, and where from you are going to collect the data, and how the data is being collected and analyzed. All this becomes part of the research methodology that you create to conduct your research. Let us take a look at part by part, very popular architectural research diagram, which you can easily spot on the internet. I have taken it just from internet, but it's a very beautifully constructed illustration on architectural research. You see, we all know that we do research in a particular context. When you do architectural research, or any research for that matter, you have to do it in a particular context. In case of architectural, the context could be political, social, cultural. The presence of architecture in these contexts, political, social, cultural, ontological, epistemological. These are all little difficult words which are used. Ontological would mean classification and explanation of entities or objects of inquiry. What actually you are going to inquire about? What are the objects of inquiry? How they are classified? Epistemological is more philosophical in nature. It's a philosophy that investigates the origin, nature, methods, and limits of human knowledge. These two are pretty complex, these two aspects, but most of the time, architectural research has to work within the political, social, and cultural domain. Once you have identified a problem in all of these domains in a context of the, let us say, the society as a whole, if you have identified a problem, then the task begins of creating a statement, asking questions, creating a hypothesis. What is your intention? You talk about the audience who will be addressed through this research, and different aspect, personal, social, strategic, theoretical, which is the aspect which you are going to address of the problem to do research. And then once you have thought about a problem to be researched upon, you have to look at the theories which are already available, existing, studies done by other experts, concepts, models, ideas, through scientific journals, literature review, looking at other people's work, what kind of theories they have arrived at to solve this kind of problem or similar problems in the given context. Once you have addressed both these issues, you develop the method. So first you identify the problem, then through literature review and detailed case studies, etc., you understand the theory behind the problem, and then you develop your own methodology. And when you work with your methodology, you do your research, you arrive at certain conclusions. Now you can see here, these are overlapping systems. The problem, the theories behind the problem, and the method that you develop to do research, they all overlap. And then somewhere between the overlaps of all these issues, which you think about or you analyze, are the conclusions of your research work. So to reach that conclusion, to find certain solutions, and to give some recommendations or develop strategies through your research work to give recommendations as part of the conclusion, you have to do a lot of data analysis. You have to do sample surveys. You have to develop tools for interviews, questionnaires, surveys, observations, do experiments. All this takes time. And in the time that is available to you as a researcher, maybe minimum 3 years, it can go on for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, depending upon the kind of data that you have to collect and the kind of analysis that you have to do. You have to develop a logical, systematic plan as the research methodology. If you keep collecting data and you don't develop a systematic plan to analyze that data, you will be left hanging, without any solution or not seeing the conclusions or solutions anywhere near you. So, but is there a way an architect can address these issues? I'm talking about there is a possible way of being illustrative about whatever you're doing, the problem identification, theoretical studies, and the method that you yourself develop in the form of an illustration. Let us see how you will do it. First of all, let's take a look at what is the importance of research methodology before looking at illustrative research methodology. Your research methodology should give you your research work a legitimacy. Most important is that whatever you do and whatever conclusions you arrive at should be scientifically sound. This is important. It cannot be just left as an argument, but it should be scientifically sound finding. It should also provide a detailed illustrative plan that helps to keep you on track. If you have that entire plan ready of how you are going to do your research by way of methodology, it should keep you on track. You should not divert, or you should not go astray from the main track at which you are doing your research work, or you are coming to conclusions through certain experiments. Your methodology should allow the reader to understand the approach and methods used to reach conclusion. This comes in the end. Whenever you present your methodology or your arguments to a reader or to an audience, first of all, your reader and audience will be your guide, your project supervisor. For a long time, till you reach a particular stage of your research work, your reader as well as your audience will be your project supervisor. So he or she should be able to understand the approach and the methods that you are using to try to reach to a conclusion or conclude your research. A research methodology is what is stretched out between different chapters. Now, Madam who spoke before me spoke about introduction and conclusion. I believe that whatever happens between introduction and conclusion in a research work, whatever happens between that, you are through the introduction chapter, and then starts the research methodology part. Everything that happens between the introduction and conclusion of a research is research methodology. How you have addressed the whole issue of your problem identification and solving of the problem in between chapters, between introduction and conclusion, is more or less the entire research methodology. If you can make it illustrative, it could be drawings, it could be sketches, photographs, or charts in a chart form, illustrative in a chart form. Each part of the chart can be made further illustrative. So in case of an architectural research work, why is it so? See, I can illustrate this. I can show this through the PhD work which I did. And let me share how I understood this idea of illustrating the research methodology. So, I have been a practicing architect right from the beginning. In between, I was also involved in teaching architecture, but then practice was the foundation on which I was also teaching students architecture and design. So the issue when I had to do a research on this particular topic, I wanted it not to be a theoretical work, but a more practical, design-oriented research work, something which is related to architectural design. So I decided to do something about why we have not, in our country, addressed the importance of our traditional systems of design. You see, if you look at modernization in our country, it suddenly dawned on our country sometimes in the 50s, or maybe a little before that, but more in the 50s when Mr. Corbusier was invited to design Chandigarh city. And thereafter, there was a big change in the way architects would address the idea of architectural design in the context of our country's different climatic zones. Till then, I suppose each climatic zone in our country had a peculiar to the climate, peculiar to the kind of materials which are available there, and also the indigenously developed technologies that were used for construction. But modernization changed everything. So I found that Kerala was a place where traditional residential built forms and design system had survived, even the impact of modernization, because the kind of buildings which were built, they survived for several generations of families who are using those built forms as their residences. And these design and detailing of these built forms had a very unique spatial characteristics. But when modernism came in the 50s, even in architectural design in Kerala, there was a big change. It was that of replacement, not adaptation of the existing design system, but totally replacing the spatial characteristics of built forms, especially in the residential built form, and changing it with modern, so-called modern buildings. That survived for several decades. But today, after 3 or 4 or 5 decades of modernization, there is a revival in the form of, not actually in the form of research, but in the form of imitation of existing traditional built form. These are the 3 or 4 points which I found as an overview for introducing my research topic, that there is a revival of traditional built forms, but not for the way they were designed in the past, but in the form of imitation, so that the built form looks like a traditional building, not necessarily that it is performing the function as the way the traditional buildings would perform. So the objective of the thesis, based on these observations, I decided as to identify concepts as linkages from traditional systems of design. Is there a way we could identify certain linkages which could have continued from traditional systems of design, becoming adaptable for designing modern houses, which respect the built form character of the place where they are located? So there is a certain character of built form which have existed for several centuries in India in the form of residential built form. My focus was on residential built form. But is it possible to understand what are those linkages which need to be continued even in modern designs, but derived as inspiration from traditional systems of design? This was one of the objectives. The second objective was to design and construct a residence. If such linkages are identified, then design and construct a residence, adapting such linkages from traditional systems using modern materials and modern construction systems. So you try to develop a design and construct a residence. My intention was not to do a theoretical analysis and come to a theoretical conclusion about research in this domain, but to actually construct a residence, adapting such linkages which are identified from traditional systems, using modern materials and modern construction systems. And once this is done, to assess the relevance of these linkages as possible continuity of traditional systems of design. So these are 3 basic objectives of the thesis which I sort of arrived at after traveling actually the entire length and breadth. The breadth of state of Kerala is very less compared to the length of the state. It's a linear kind of state with hundreds of built forms on both sides of the road if you travel from Kasaragod to Trivandrum. So I did a study of all the different kinds of built forms which exist in the entire stretch of the landscape of Kerala, to arrive at certain linkages to be identified, which could be continued as traditional systems of design even in the modern day. So in the introduction, I put all here I am using words because I have to express the thoughts which I have, which I would be illustrating later in the form of text. So here the scope of this research is to study the relevance of continuity of traditional systems of design of houses as linkages for adaptation in contemporary design practices to construct residences more adapted to human, environmental, and cultural realities. Now this last sentence, it is not the last sentence, but the last part of the sentence is very important, because from time immemorial, let us say for 400, 500, 600 or 700 centuries in state of Kerala, residences which are constructed were adapted to human, environmental, and cultural realities. And my study revealed to me that that was not happening in the modern context, especially after 1950s, the kind of houses which are getting designed and built by architects in the state. They are not at all adapted to human, environmental, and cultural realities. So this became the essence of the introduction part of the scope of work. Now comes creating the methodology to solve this problem, how to identify the linkages and from traditional to modern systems, so that these linkages can be used to design modern houses based on traditional values of design. So once again, I identified 3 points. Once again, I'm presenting this in the form of words, which I would later illustrate. The first was to study with respect to space, material, and construction systems. It is a fact that all architecture contains in itself 3 aspects of 3 tangible aspects. One of them may be intangible. The space aspect may be intangible, but the material and construction systems in any architecture is very much a tangible aspect of that piece of architecture. So you have a space, you use certain kind of materials, and you use certain kind of construction system or structural system using these materials and create a space. So do a study of residential built forms with respect to these 3 aspects: the space system, material system, and construction system. And within this, identify with respect to adaptation and continuity. What kind of space systems can be adapted and made use of as continuity into a modern built form? What kind of materials can be used for adaptation with the new construction systems in the design? And finally, once this is understood, the theoretical part is understood, apply in design and construction of what I wanted to call a post-traditional house. So say till 50s, we had traditional houses all over Kerala. They still exist, traditional houses. But what happened in 50s is modern houses were constructed. So could there be something in between? There were traditional houses. So, in our younger days, this term called postmodernism had become very popular. Modernism and postmodernism. So I borrowed that idea to call the work which I am doing as post-traditional work. It is based on traditions, but would exist in the contemporary times as a post-traditional house. So in order to do this, I designed and constructed a building to prove my point as part of the methodology. So once again, if you go a little bit of details of this methodology in words which I have presented here: space, material, and construction system. What are they? They govern the design and detailing of just walls and roof. So you have spaces which are, enclosed by walls and roof. There are 4 walls or maybe many walls and roof. They are barriers which separate external environment and internal environment. I was trying to give a very simplistic definition to a piece of architecture as walls and roof, which are barriers which separate the external environment from the internal environment. So you have an internal climate and there's an external climate, larger climate, and internal microclimate. So this, how an architect details the walls and roofs in such a manner that there is a kind of a balance between the comfort conditions created by the external environment within the internal environment. So space, material, and construction systems govern design and detailing. These 3 things they govern the design and detailing of the walls and the roof. In any region, such details make certain place adaptive qualities inherent in the built form. So this sentence is very crucial. In any region, such details make certain place adaptive qualities inherent in the built form. If you apply this sentence to different parts of India, say in Kerala, it has got a certain place adaptive qualities of the typical Kerala traditional house. You move into Tamil Nadu, it will be different. You go to Karnataka, it will be different. You come to Maharashtra, it will be different. I'm talking about traditional built forms. There is something called a place adaptive quality, which is inherent in the built form of a residence in any region, especially in our country, which has got at least 8 different climatic contexts for designing architecture. So now comes the illustrative part. So having spoken about the theoretical aspects of starting a research, introducing the research topic, and even trying to put down in small sentences the research methodology, now comes the illustration part, creating connectivity from one stage of the work to the other stage and trying to understand how the research will be conducted. So for this, again, once the words are put into certain boxes to explain the whole research methodology. We know that architecture is always, not today, but perhaps it has always been climate driven. Anywhere in the world, till modernism and industrial revolution happened, architecture was always climate driven. So what climate driven architecture did, it used, what is the quality it had? It had traditionally generated built forms, which had a particular type of space system. Let us call it space system 1, material system 1, and construction system 1, which was actually suitable for the society of those times, which had a particular kind of lifestyle. They had certain kind of values, and for conduct of certain kind of activities in those spaces. So that was society, but society is always changing. The changing society is a dynamic phenomena. So over a period of time, because of emerging technologies, emerging products of technologies, lifestyle changes. People travel from place to place, their lifestyle changes, their values change, the activities change. So for a new set of lifestyle, new set of values, and new set of activities, we develop different type of space systems. And architects have to understand the changing lifestyle, values, and activities of human beings and evolve new type of space systems using material system and construction system and create architecture. Now, it could always be climate driven. This new space system which you create, type 2, could also be climate driven. But what happens in modern architecture is that it stopped being climate driven. It became technology driven. A desirable architecture could be a combination of both, of traditions as well as adapting technology. You create a desirable architecture, which I prefer to call as space system 3, material system 3, and construction system 3, which is perhaps a combination of both 1 and 2. So you create a desirable architecture which is not totally removed from the context in which it is being created. So this is an illustrative example of the research methodology which I used for continuing my research work. So here comes the illustrative part. So in order to do this space system study, material system study, and construction system study, entire thing was done in an illustrative manner, analyzing built forms. I did it in the Kerala's landscape, analyzing different types of built forms with respect to their performances, the spaces which were enclosed using certain kind of materials and construction system, and how they performed in a particular context of culture and use of space by people in this region. This is a complex process, but I'm just showing you the illustrations which I use to explain this, and the kind of linkages identified through this kind of illustrative studies. So some of the interesting finding is that the first thing which struck me when I do this kind of study is that, see, we are used to using English as a language, but in traditional systems, English has absolutely no presence. If you do not understand the language of the people who have created the kind of unique architecture for themselves, we cannot put it in the context of an English-speaking mindset. So understanding the language, understanding and trying to try to translate the thought processes of local people who have designed for centuries wonderful built forms for themselves as residences by their own architects or sthapatis becomes a challenge, because you have to understand the language in which they were created, the kind of textbooks they followed, the kind of theories they have identified and used through the textbooks which the sthapatis had followed. So identification of linkages were in the form of terminologies which are alien to modern architectural development. Something like Brahmasthanam. How do we explain Brahmasthanam in a modern context? We can put it in the cardinal orientation and say the centrality, the central space is called Brahmasthanam. Then dimensional coordination, which were done totally based on human standard, and which was called Manushya Pramanam in the context of the language of Kerala. Then courtyard enclosure, which we call courtyard in English, is known as Nadu Muttam. Nadu Muttam, the meaning of the Nadu Muttam is not courtyard, but something very different. Nadu Muttam means, the meaning itself is very, very evocative. Nadu means central, Muttam means Angan or a piece of land. So there is a piece of land in the center of the built form, so which we in English called courtyard. So then growth pattern of spaces. Spaces grow around the Brahmasthanam or Nadumuttam in a particular pattern. There is a pattern of growth of spaces. And these spaces are called shalas, shala in the local language. There is a growth pattern based on certain aspects of orientation, ventilation, and orientation with respect to the cardinal directions. And thus design is created. So, and in order to enclose these spaces in the wall, certain kinds of detailing is introduced of creating timber grills, which has got its own name called Ari, creating different type of roof slabs at different levels, and different kind of built-in elements such as seats, and different kind of minimal openings within the wall, which ensures year-round or day and night ventilation of those spaces. So these are some of the interesting linkages for adaptation, which I found. Not only this, but many more linkages, which perhaps are non-existent in the way modern architecture was being developed in the state. So now comes illustrating this whole process of design. Excuse me for a moment. Design of a built form, of a residential form. Though what you see here is dimensional coordination using metric system, but it was not metric system which I used for design development, but the state's own or the local culture specific method of dimensioning called Hasta and Angula dimensions. All that I have done here is I've shown the dimension metric system, but the original layout of the property, design development, the development of shalas or spaces around the Brahmasthanam of the built form is based on dimensioning system called Manushya Pramanam. So this is all illustrative in nature. After developing the design using illustrations, the design is analyzed using arguments, once again drawn from the traditional systems of design. So this whole methodology is illustrative in nature, how the design is evolved, how dimensioning system is adapted from the traditions, and how they are applied in the design and development, and how different types of linkages which are part of traditional built forms are adapted into this particular residence, which I designed based on, which I prefer to call as post-traditional house, based on traditional systems of design. I will not delve too long on this because this could be a totally different kind of presentation altogether, how this design evolved. But what I'm showing you is the illustrative methodology which I presented as part of architectural research by way of designing a building and constructing it and then analyzing it. So these are all different types of linkages, which is included in as part of the built form. And finally, the building had to be constructed. So the proof of the whole exercise is in the construction of the built form. It's not theoretical in nature anymore. It is not theoretical analysis or arguments, but actually making a structure which I had to prove that it belongs to the place. It belongs to it is associative with the different types of built form built within the last 400 to 500 years in this state. So what you see below are buildings which have existed from between 60 to 400-year-old buildings. All these buildings are very old. Some of them, the extreme right building is something which is almost 400-year-old building in Calicut. And so are the other buildings which I documented. So if I build a new building today, why should I build it something which is totally alien, which I could build in Uttar Pradesh or Bombay or Chandigarh or West Bengal? But the building which I, as an architect, would design over here should belong to this place. It should belong at least not only visually, but also functionally to belong to this particular place. So this was built in 2005, while all these other structures were built over a period of 60 to 400 years old. And I had a comparison of this built form with all these different built forms which I had analyzed. So a kind of linkages, not only through imagery, but through function, through space formation, through use of materials, and through use of construction systems. A new built form is created. It's a new built form. It's a modern house, but which has got its own linkages to the past of the state. And I would prefer to call it the post-traditional built form. So this is an illustrative methodology, research methodology for architectural development. If I put it down again in the form of words, how this was achieved, this is a kind of a chart which could be created. So I start with traditional design system, which is a time-tested way of creating architecture. It is analyzed by way of space system, material system, and construction system. Identified design, you can follow these arrows, and finally you come to a conclusion where you design a new building, which is a post-traditional built form, which is satisfying all the comforts which are expected from a built form in this region, but it is not a modern house. It is you can say that it is a modern building, but which is respecting the traditions of this particular traditions and culture of building in this particular state. So this is after showing you those images, this is the way the entire chart is created to explain how the research was done, the methodology of conducting that kind of research. So already Madam has spoken about writing. I will not delve much upon this particular aspect, but when I did this entire exercise as a illustrative example, now I had to sit down and write what I had done. You see, I had half a mind. I'm sharing my thoughts here with all of you, that I had half a mind to say that I will present my PhD work in Malayalam, which is a local language, but then that was not acceptable. Who will accept it as a PhD work? I said, because this building belongs to Kerala, all the sentiments related to the local culture, local language, and the terminologies associated with built form in the local language, I would like to present the PhD work in Malayalam, but then that was not acceptable. So I had to spend time trying to explain this in English. So some of these methods which I used to explain them in English is there as part of my thesis. You see, in introduction itself, I first wrote everything in Malayalam, but then I had to convert everything into English because the PhD work had to be submitted in English. And much gets lost when you convert into another language. A language is just alien to this climate, the culture of the people. But then this writing, as Madam said, you have to keep writing, rewriting, editing. But my work was doubled because I was doing it in one language and then translating into the more acceptable format of English language. So what you see here is the important sentences which had to be created to grab the attention of the reader or any other researchers who would read this. This is just the page, chapter 1, introduction page from my research work. And in conclusion, the methodology which I showed you was between the introduction and conclusion. In conclusion, you have to summarize your argument in the conclusion. So here again, I'm just showing you examples from my conclusion. How I wrote the whole thing in Malayalam first, then I converted everything into English so that I could sort of present it in the context, in the way it was required as a PhD work. So, but the reality is that the illustrative methodology is the one which happened between introduction and conclusion. Using illustration, designing, constructing a building, and then documenting it, the entire process of construction. And then finally, concluding it with a language which is alien to the method used for designing and construction of the building. So illustrative methodology benefits. You see, I took a long time to do this PhD work. It took me almost 7 to 8 years to conclude this because I had to spend about 2 years to construct the building and analyze the building, to present it in the right kind of format with the right kind of argument. So illustrative methodology has certain benefits which I realized when I concluded my research work. Other researchers who want to replicate the research have enough information to do so, because if it is illustrative, architects understand illustration very well. So as an architect researcher, an illustrative methodology becomes more appealing in nature. Researchers who receive criticism can refer to methodology and explain their approach. You can, every time you look at an image, you will be able to explain it better, using an image rather than using words, especially if you are not very good at the language to express your thoughts in English language. Something which I have always seen with many of my students who design buildings very well, but who cannot explain it in English because they don't know the language English, but they design very well. So illustrative methodology can help provide researchers with a specific plan to follow throughout their research. So I had a specific plan that I will do everything in an illustrative format and reach the conclusion of designing and constructing the building. The methodology design process helps researchers select the correct methods for the objectives. You have a final objective for designing and construction. So this kind of illustrative, and you create a lot of illustrations. It is not simply writing, but creating illustrations to develop the design. It allows researchers to document what they intend to achieve with the research from the outset. So right from the beginning, you create documentation in the form of illustration. So finally, when it is documented, in fact, my PhD work is full of illustrations. The title is Linkages in Architecture, Traditional to Modern, but using illustrations. This is available today on published by a company called Pothi. The link I am sharing with you, and this is the book which is available. If you would like to take any of your researchers interested in doing illustrative method as a research methodology, it could be of use to you. Thank you very much. I should not be saying happy writing here. I would rather like to say happy illustrating your research work. Thank you so much. I'm done with my presentation, madam, and I could have stretched it much more by showing all the kinds of drawings and sketches and images which I created based on as part of the research methodology, but then I don't know how it would be received, but the crux of the matter is that the entire methodology is illustrative in nature. And for architects, it should come very easy, provided you are doing research based on development of architecture or different aspects of architecture. If people have questions, I'll answer them. And also I would like to add a few more interesting things which I learned after doing the PhD work.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Professor Anand here.
Yes, sir.
Actually, you talked about climate and the technology.
Mm-hmm.
What about culture, the intangibles, the value systems? How do you document that, and how do you take it forward to a modern age?
See, that is where the importance of language comes, sir. I told you I was trying to do the entire thing in Malayalam, but that was not acceptable. Today, I think under the national education policy, they are allowing you to do research and writing in different languages. But the days almost 22 years ago when I was doing my PhD work, the PhD work had to be done in English, especially in technology. So language is the basic construct of any culture. So to understand culture, you have to do the entire study in the language which people followed. So it is a fact that traditional architecture anywhere in our country is based on the language of the people who created it, the language and it's based on that. But it's very difficult to convert that into English language. The nuances of why a particular space is named like this, why a particular space is used like this in tradition, it can definitely not be explained in English language. So the core of a culture is the language which people use. And unfortunately, we don't have any documentation of, let us say, terminologies and different aspects of architecture and design in different languages in our country. We use English. I'm sure there is a lot to do, to research by way of, say, architecture in Tamil, architecture in Malayalam, architecture in Hindi, architecture in Marathi. By going back into the the history of such developments in our countryside. So language is important.
Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I'm Sania Kulkarni from Kolhapur.
Yes.
First, I would like to say thank you for your wonderful presentation. I'm doing my PhD from the same topic, but in the region of Kutch and Bhuj. So I'm working on the same methodology, but the difference in my thesis is I'm comparing two type of structures: the traditional structure with low-rise and high-rise structure with modern conventional material and technology. So how could I combine those things in my methodology or in my process of design?
So when you are trying to compare low-rise with high-rise,
actually the traditional material and techniques which in the region of Kutch and Bhuj they have used, but
yes,
in high-rise building the requirements are changing and the material and technology are also changing.
yes. So
But
how can you compare two totally diverse things?
No, actually I'm working on the roof. The
Okay.
roof section of the high-rise structure, how we can combine both advantages and disadvantages of both traditional and contemporary material, and how can I module those module and give a module for both traditional and conventional material.
See,
So
you will have to do a study of structural systems. Roof as a
Yes.
structural system, correct?
Okay.
And you intend to put the same type of roof form on top of a high-rise building, correct? Which is
not the exact form, the advantages of those material with the combination of contemporary material too.
So instead of doing with the high-rise building, why don't you do high-rise means how high? That is also a question.
Mid-rise, not high-rise.
Mid-rise. So
Yes.
what is
Because,
the tallest building in traditional construction in Bhuj?
Traditional building G+1 maximum.
Maximum.
Yes, and now they are developing like G+5, 6, but or more than that, around 11 floors. So the skyline of that is changing, and the advantages which we will get in our bunga structure. So we are losing those type of advantages. So how could I combine? I'm working on how could we combine those advantages in combination with the use of mud rolls and pepper tubes. So we will get that comfort level in
central support of a bunga structure.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So how are you going to put it in a, and that depends entirely on the span of the bungas. It's a circular in nature as far as I know. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So how will you put it into a context of a non-circular?
I'm working on only material and the composition of those material and the structural systems. So human comfort and the U value factor. I'm considering those things into my design and prepare one methodology for that. And comparing.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting it. How it will be applied in a high-rise building? How will you apply it in a high-rise, the context of a high-rise building? Because the very definition of a bunga structure or the structural system
not
is
exact bunga structure. The structures in Kutch and Bhuj are a different type of structure. One of them is bunga structures.
Okay,
so I studied number of structures which they have constructed before, the traditional systems and especially the material. So we can't use thatch in a mid-rise building.
Exactly.
And above. So I'm working on the properties of those material. How could I cooperate them with the contemporary material and the advantages of those in the
yours will have to be more of experimental work. You will have to do lot of analysis, or you'll have to gather. You have to do temperature studies. First of all, temperature and ventilation studies of these built forms. It's more related to the technology and science rather than an architect's work. Correct.
Okay,
you will have to work with a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer who understands temperature variations within this kind
I'm doing with this all these things with the help of simulation.
Okay.
and comparing those. Is it okay? I will connect with you later
Yeah,
with
sure,
the
sure.
help of
It
Mohit,
is
so
a,
we can.
it's a little complex thing that you are trying, because
Yes.
in design, how you will execute it is something which is questionable, but it
Yes,
is, it's
I
more
will
like science
connect
and
you
technology.
later with
Yeah,
the
okay, you are
help of
welcome.
mail,
Yeah,
your
you
email
can,
ID. So
you can.
yes, thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah, hello. May I ask a question?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Hello, sir. It was a very beautiful presentation, and this is the first time I've actually seen someone build an entire house during the research. It was really commendable. So, during in your first presentation slide, you talked about that any built structure is based on the climatic response of that particular region. So what I wanted to ask is, after your PhD and after you've built that structure, have you done any analysis on the climatic response of the structure or the design that you've built?
Yes. Of course, that's what, see, if you read my thesis, you will know all this, how it was done. I had to
Okay.
subject it to almost 6 months of temperature and ventilation studies to prove my point that these elements which I used have created better comfort conditions compared to a modern building. I studied the buildings around this area where I built this. I built this for me as a house, my own house. So, I spent money on making a house for myself, house come office for myself, to prove a point, and then compared it with all the other buildings which are built by different architects and engineers around in that colony and other places as modern structure.
Okay.
So comparison was very important. And also I did a detailed analysis of study of temperature variations in a traditional built form of Kerala, 2-3 traditional built forms. So there was a comparison of temperatures, ventilation, for almost 6-7 months, so that
Okay.
kind of analysis was present. It's there in my PhD work. I didn't speak about it because that would take a longer. And then I have proved a point that temperature is much better controlled in this building, though it is a modern building, but because of this kind of elements which are continued into this particular built form. It is possible to do all this now, but when I was doing this research work, there were no simulation softwares available. Simulation softwares came after that. So today I'm sure it is possible to create, you do the design and do simulate the climate conditions and get your results, right? So this was not available almost 25 years ago. So I had to actually physically verify by measuring temperatures and mean speed.
That's a commendable thing to do.
That's why I said it took almost 8 years for me to conclude my work. And then when I requested my guide and other committee members to come and see for themselves, they should listen to me. I said, there's no point in my making a presentation. You come and experience for yourself. So they came and experienced. I said, architecture is for experience. I can't make any presentation of my PhD work unless you come and experience it. I mean, you have to experience for it. I mean, I can fudge with the data and say, this is happening and that is happening. But then you come and experience. At peak of summer, you come and experience. If you want to make sure that I have not used any active technologies to create comfort condition. It's the same passive technologies available, in the context of the climate. So that's why this kind of research is very interesting. Because once you succeed in this, then you always keep doing projects like this. So this is what I wanted to mention, that you develop different methodologies also once you do projects like this. Same thing cannot be applied everywhere. I had a very interesting example of a project which I got to rebuild a house for a very old lady. You see, she was almost 97, 98 year old. And she had been living in that old traditional house for almost 40, 45 years. More than that, actually. After marriage, she had come there and she had lived there for almost 60 years also in that house. And the house started collapsing because it was old. So her son and they asked me to design, like they wanted to keep the old house, but it was impossible. It was too old and the structure was very weak. So how should I could have designed a modern house or something similar to that for her comfort. But I realized one thing, that what is it that is making her comfortable at this age in that house. It was not the climate also. Climate she was used to. She was 97-year-old. It took me some time to figure out and spend time with her to understand what was comfortable for her. Actually, she could blindfolded walk in that house because she was walking in that house for 40-45 years. You understand that? It took me some time because I was observing her every day that she had a particular room where she has been sleeping after her husband died. Also, she has been sleeping in that room. Blindfolded, she could walk anywhere. Her eyesight has reduced, but not that bad. But she had a particular routine of getting up and going around, doing things and coming back. And so I decided that I'll keep the circulation intact. You get my point?
Yeah.
See, we pay a lot of attention to circulation in design. But here I realized that the importance of circulation in the life of a 97-year-old lady. So I designed a totally new house but I removed the entire house, dug out the foundation. I said, we will use the same foundation pit for the new house. So new excavation was not required. All the foundation was removed. In the same pit, new foundation was laid and structure was built and rooms were built and according to the same plan, but a modern structure. It was a modern structure. I did not use even sloping roof. I used an ordinary RCC roof because they had limitations of money to be spent. Creating a timber roof would become very expensive, like the old house. So some of the materials were reused, such as doors and windows, but with a limited budget, it was a very ordinary structure. If you would look at it, you'll say, what kya architect ne kaam kiya? Kuch bhi nahi hai isme architecture, like something very simple. You understand? But the circulation was exactly the same as what she had when she was living there. She was so happy in the new house. She lived till 99 years of age. That means 2 more years she lived in that house.
Oh.
I found it, I was very happy that she was the one who needed to be satisfied, not anybody else.
Exactly, yes.
So importance of circulation. If a person has lived for 40 years, when they are dislocated from that kind of circulation to another circulation, their lifespan reduces after that. I mean, I believe so. It is quite possible that your lifespan will come down if you leave your present living environment as an old person and suddenly put into another environment where you are not used to that circulation pattern, correct? So these are all very interesting learnings from architectural design. And we design these spaces, but we don't realize how just circulation also can affect the life of a human being, apart from material system or space system, or space is part of space system. Circulation is part of space system, how rooms are arranged.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.
Sir, I have a small question.
Yes, sir.
In the list of things, you said Sutram as minimal openings to encourage ventilation. But in a warm humid climate, we generally know that we need larger openings to encourage unhindered circulation of air. So how is that? What is your comments on that?
Actually, the Sutram is, I have explained it as minimal opening. That minimal opening is kept in certain directions. If you look at the plan of the house based on certain kind of configuration, along the diagonals of the house in the plan, and certain walls, certain small openings are left. It's called Sutram. Just one small hole with a small frame. So there is a small hole left, and it is aligned to the wind direction of the house. This is what I discovered in traditional houses in Kerala. So even if you close the house, everything, and leave for some time, the house remains ventilated because there is a suction effect because of the small openings which are left along the axis of the house, diagonal axis. So when you come after a few days or even after 12 hours, few hours, open the door, you feel fresh in the house. There is always a continuous ventilation in the house. That is what I found as the importance of Sutram. But the Sutram formation has got other religious importance also in Kerala's traditional system. I was more interested in the practical as why they have to leave such small openings in certain positions, in certain directions in the house. It was meant for permanent ventilation, even if the whole house is locked up. That's what I found.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Vidya, you can unmute yourself and ask question.
Yeah, sir, good evening, everyone.
Yeah,
So, actually, I also started a similar work of comparing modern and traditional, but it was not well received because saying that, yes, modern performs well, I mean, traditional performs well, but we can't be doing that 5-meter high ceiling and the 2 feet thick walls. We know that it performs, but we can't do it in a modern context. So what is the novelty in the new, in the comparison was the question asked again and again when I come up with this discussion. How do we address that?
You see, I have worked only on single residential forms, right? And I have created a residential form. Now, it all depends on in the what context of built form you are doing this work. So in which context were you working, which state?
So mine was institutional building at Chennai, sir. British colonial and modern is what I was comparing. But the question keeps coming like, there is nothing new that we know that tradition performs. And we can't do that now. So what is next? What is the novelty in the work?
Why you can't do it now? What is the answer to that? Why should you say you can't do it?
We didn't be doing a 2 feet thick wall or a 5-meter high ceiling. And in a modern context, we look for optimization of the material used, isn't it?
Okay, but then you can develop details which may appear as 2 feet, but then it would have other special qualities for that thick wall. It may not be a thick wall; it could be a wall which is thin but enclosing spaces.
Has the like U value of that, yeah. But
yeah, you can work out. You want to get the same U value. That's it, right?
Yeah.
So you could develop designs using new materials to get the same U value. I mean, you'll have to do some kind of simulation for that, right?
Yeah, I'm working on that, but
so
generally the reception.
Even if it is a public building or institutional building, it all depends upon what kind of functions you are subjecting that space to. You could have mezzanine areas in a 5 meters ceiling in the modern context. In an olden context, there were no mezzanines. They had, but then there could be mezzanines for different use. It all depends upon how you address your design requirements in such a context. You're talking about a built form which has got thick walls and high ceiling. Now, in what all ways you can analyze the section of such a built form in the modern context using modern materials and develop structural system, which will have the same kind of U value performance and comfort performance as the old building, correct? So it's again a long process. You have to actually experiment and create a built form or do a simulation studies. But I think if somebody says, what is so new, you should take it as a challenge. I mean, you prove it. You have to prove it. You have to prove it.
Okay.
But then I believe there is, you know how it is only recently that architects have started doing PhD, correct? No architecture teachers ever did any PhD 30 years ago, 25 years ago. Practice was more than enough for you to be a good teacher. And I believe that is true even today. There is absolutely no point in doing a lot of theoretical study without doing a single building and you calling yourself a teacher. You should be designing buildings to prove your point as an architect, not writing a lot of papers and in different journals. To me, that doesn't make sense. To me, architect is a person who designs and constructs buildings all the time. If you are doing some research and teaching, it is your hobby. You see, you can't have a singer who does only theory and doesn't sing a song. See, how can you call a person who doesn't sing a song a singer, but you teach music? You can't be teaching music without singing. So same thing in architecture. Research in architecture has to be based on what you achieve by making buildings, how you design buildings differently. By that argument, there are so many wonderful new generation architects who should be given 2-3 PhDs, I believe. Though they have not in the academic field at all, they are doing such wonderful design and construction of built forms today, young generation, who deserve, they don't even have a postgraduate degree, but they are in the practice and they are doing wonderful work, new generation architects. So research or PhD is actually in doing in architectural projects. It is the way you do project, as the principal of BMS college mentioned. If you do a project, you do so much of research. If you are conscientious architect. You know, you do a lot of research and do a project. But there are, of course, a lot of architects, more architects who don't do any research. There's standard, you can do standard solutions, and society prefers standard solutions. But there is a lot of scope for architects to do in-depth research before actually constructing a building, designing and constructing a building. Because it is a creative discipline. And in creative discipline, architecture is an experiential domain. You have to create an experience and prove your point. That can be considered as PhD. You see, I mean, I believe in that. I mean, I'm not very happy with the idea of just writing papers and publishing and, you know, calling it PhD. Real PhD is when you make a building which you prove your point, whether it could be a house, it could be institution, it could be industry. You come out with something very interesting. For industrial buildings, you come out with ideas. But there are a lot of possibilities. And we have just started. It's only, I think, 20 years since a lot of architects are doing PhD. But meaningful PhD is when you can actually create buildings which are different. Okay. I think it is possible. Your topic is very much valid. You can definitely, you should take it as a challenge and do it in the context of a public building or an institutional building.
Thank you.
So there's one more question from Anjali. She's put in a chat box.
Yeah.
Interested to know about the involvement of traditional craftsmen during the study of traditional structure and the construction of post-traditional residences of yours. Thank you.
Okay. See here, traditional craftsmen. Now, the building which I designed, there was only one craftsman I met for my building. I left the entire building exposed. It was done in laterite stone. The person who chiseled the laterite stone was the only craftsman I used, because the rest of it is all concrete and the other materials are used, you see. But this person was so good, a person who could carve laterite stone in whichever way you want, with minimum joinery, joint line shown. So, you know, such people you don't see anymore. So in traditional buildings, craftsmanship was supreme. So it is up to us architects to identify what kind of crafts we should encourage and allow to, because in our country is full of wonderful craftsmanship, but modernism has taken away this, this quality of craftsmanship from the hands of, and they are suffering today. Craftsmen are suffering in our country today, thanks to architects who have become modern. You know, who will give them jobs? You know, carpenters and craft people, masons. I keep meeting such people in my project site who are wonderful, but then they end up as shuttering carpenters for builders, though they are very good carpenters otherwise, because projects are not being done the way they would like to do. You know, craftsmen would like to do.
Thank you, sir. That is
I
really...
have a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kavita here. Thank you for that interesting presentation. In this whole journey from tradition to modern, I wanted to know your take on the architectural connotations in each of these contexts. Is it same as a traditional construction methodology, or is it kind of lost, or is it interdependent, which expressed certain timeline or their culture, or what is your take on it?
You mean in the context of, say, a particular place?
Yes, sir.
See, as I mentioned earlier, you know, today a house could be anywhere in India. An architect designs a house which could be put in Kerala or Tamil Nadu. It doesn't make a difference. But it was not so, let us say, 60 years ago or even 60, 70 years ago. You could not build a house which is built in Kerala. You could not go and put it up in UP or MP or some such place. So modernism has sort of made tradition orphan. You know, the traditional construction methods, systems, everything has become, it's like they're relegated into an orphanage, and modernism has taken over. So only architects can sort out this issue by understanding your own context of design. So if you are in Tamil Nadu, you should be really trying to understand the nuances of old designs and how you can, I wouldn't say that there are no architects. There are architects who are doing this. It's not that they are not doing it, but the numbers are very less. So there has been no institutionalized effort to document all this, or to, you would be surprised to know, I'm sure all of you agree that traditional architectural knowledge system in India is very vast. Yes or no? Anybody who says no? It is true, right? Traditional architectural knowledge system is very vast all over India, right?
Yes.
But does it feature even as one subject in any of our 500-600 architecture colleges? It doesn't. Why? It is only shown as study tours. Do some sketches, take some selfies, and that is study tour, or make some measured drawing. But is traditional architectural system, theories of traditional architectural system taught as part of history of Indian architecture anywhere in any school? It doesn't. Why are we not doing it? We have 600, 700, 800 years of history of architecture, Indian architecture, whether it is during Mughal period or, but how they designed and constructed in different periods, or even in rural areas. Or we do rural study, but we don't do the study of theory behind designing in rural areas. We simply make some measured drawings and copy some things, but we forget about it. But there is so much scope. There is so much scope to start Bachelor of Architectural Studies entirely based on traditional systems of design for different areas. But in all architecture schools in India, we teach what our construction books are all Mackay or Shudley or, all those Western books. Why we have not evolved from our background? There is still so much scope available. So I'm saying this because currently I'm involved in mentoring this course on Masters in Traditional Indian Architectural Knowledge System. It's the only course today in India that is in Pune, and even IIT Kharagpur, which is my alma mater where I studied, that has also started a Center for Excellence in Traditional Knowledge System. Architecture department is doing a lot of interesting work there, creating courses, elective courses in different domains. So each school of architecture should try to look at their own region and not just document only the in the form of measured drawings, but document the theories behind design and development. In Maharashtra, it is possible. In Kutch, it is possible. In Rajasthan, it is possible. And see what has happened to all those craftsmen who created all this. Have they survived? Or is there anything available now? It is there, it is existing, but architects are not paying much attention to. Architecture schools are not paying much attention to get down to the theories and technical subjects, putting it down in the form of documents for everyone to share. Even languages itself, doing everything in the local languages and trying to understand. I don't know, all of you who are practicing architects, did you have this difficulty when the first time when you go to a construction site, when none of the workmen know English, how did you communicate to them? In your local language, right? But we are not taught even local languages in schools of architecture. When you go to your construction site, if in Maharashtra, they all speak Marathi, right? They have their own terminologies for different things that they do on the construction site. In Kerala, it is in Malayalam. And so we don't talk about these things in our architectural education or profession. The importance of the use of local language and terminologies for different parts of, say, building construction. So there is actually a lot of scope for doing research in traditional Indian architectural knowledge system as postgraduate studies or PhD work. I had just done one part of residential designs. There are some others like me, Dr. Ashalata Thampuran from Kerala, who was the principal of College of Architecture in Trivandrum, and few others who have done this kind of research work. But there is plenty of scope actually.
Thank you, sir.
In fact, I believe that every school of architecture, especially SPAs, IIT Kharagpur has started, all the important schools of good, well-established schools of architecture should start Indian knowledge system in architecture as a core study of their own region at least. Of course, it was first started by SEPT Ahmedabad in the form of at least Louis Kahn Trophy, at least creating documents. At least that was done in, Vastu Shilpa Foundation, and thanks to Professor Doshi. A lot of documentation is there in the form of just documenting drawings of traditional architecture. But what about the theories behind that? What about understanding the languages behind development of built forms in different parts? What about all the Havelis of Rajasthan? What are the terminologies involved in developing them? So each school of architecture in each region could create wonderful documentation of based on the local language. And ultimately, we should be able to create an encyclopedia of technology and terminologies of traditional architectural built form in our country, which is so vast, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari or from Kutch to Assam. We know it, but we are not doing it. That's the problem. And much of this research, actually, really digging into this kind of research is done by foreigners. I don't know if you are aware of Professor Adam Hardy, who came all the way from UK to do research on Tamil Nadu's temple forms. See, Adam Hardy's seminal work was on Tamil Nadu's evolution of temple forms in Tamil Nadu. So, whereas we ourselves have not done it. And all the textbooks of history of architecture are written by foreigners for us. How many good textbooks we have created for our states? We have not. We depend on Ferguson and Mitchell and, but they did it from their perspective. They didn't, they did from their perspective. What is our perspective of our own history? That is very important. And so my thesis was my perspective of my state, where I was in love with all these old buildings, because my grandfather had such a small, very interesting house, which fell down one day, but nobody cared because I had not become an architect those days. If I had become an architect, probably I would have cared to, sort of retain it, but it got demolished. So this is happening in so many families. At least it should not happen in architects' families. Like your traditional built forms are just giving way to modern glass houses, you see. There is plenty that can be done, but then who will build the cat? That is a question. And in fact, today, government has started an Indian knowledge system department. AICT has started this. If you go to their website, you will find there is so much of scope, so much of funding also they are giving to do this kind of work, Government of India.
Any more questions?
Please visit the website of Indian Knowledge System, iks.org by Government of India. Sure. You will have a lot of scope to do research. You will get funding for doing research. I am a recognized mentor on their website. I get interns every season, every 6 months, I get some interns to do research work. But please do visit, because all architects should do it, because you'll get funding to do research work for anything that unique to your area or your place you want to do. It could be a small project also, but if you are able to sufficiently impress the committee which is doing all this, you will get even funding to do research. You need to do that because we have not done it. I'm trying to work on developing an encyclopedia of construction terminologies, design terminologies in Indian languages. So I have got some interns who are working in one in Bengal, one in Kerala, one in Tamil Nadu, one in Karnataka, trying to compile. And the government is paying them to do this. And they are working under me as my interns, and they will develop. So once everybody contributes, it will take a couple of years to develop this encyclopedia, but I can't do it alone. So I know Malayalam, but other languages have to come from different sources. So there is so much scope. Please do visit the IKS website, and every 2 months, they have conducted several seminars. You can watch on YouTube their seminars, and you will definitely find an avenue for your research work.
It's really a nice awareness to all the architects present here, sir. Yeah.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
I have a question not related to the topic.
Yes, sir.
How are your cats, sir?
Oh, sir, cats are not very, very friendly. They come and go. So
Okay.
you can't depend on them. They are not like dogs. Dogs are very faithful.
All right.
Now they are not there at all. They have gone away. So
Okay.
they find a better place, they go away actually. So you keep tab on them. Thank you.
So really, we would like to thank you for that extremely enlightening presentation on illustrative methodology in research, which is very much required for architects, like you mentioned. And also you summed up like how we need to look at the context, climate, and the culture, and you enhance the importance of that. And also like your vision, how to integrate these things in the architectural practice and architectural education, which is really commendable. And we really thank you for being here and enlightening us with so many other current things happening, and about the Government of India website, and also where we can do much more than what we think we can do actually.
Yes.
Yeah,
I just leave the website address.
Yeah.
Chat box.
IKS.com. Okay. I hope everybody have noted it down, and hope to see much more good works with your inspiration. So
thank you. Thank you.
okay. Yeah, dear participants, I think we came to the end of day 1, session 2. And before we end today's sessions, we also would like to tell you about tomorrow's sessions. And as mentioned, please do log in 15 minutes prior to the session. Yeah, day 2, we have session 1 on identification of research problem and research gaps in research study, writing introduction, sustainability and availability of good literature and how to review it, by Professor N. Sridharan. And also we have session 2, that is exploring, identifying and selecting appropriate tools and techniques for data collection and analysis, by Professor Dr. Ramesh Rikonda. So we are looking forward to these sessions. Yes, sir. We noted this, sir. Your sir has put a message in the chat box about the website and his mentorship. Please do take a note of this. We'll conclude today's sessions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the speakers and the participants.